Hey, everybody, welcome. We're just waiting for all the people to join in. Before we kick it off, I'll give it a few seconds.
Hi, Kristjan.
Hey, Lucy, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. Just trying to navigate this platform. It's not one I'm used to. We use so many, don't we? And they're all different. It's great to see so many people joining. If you're not familiar with this platform, there is a chat function over on the right-hand side. We're going to do some introductions in a little while, but it'd be great if you could just let us know who you are and where you're dialing in from today. So open up that chat and let us know who you are and where you're dialing in from. And I suppose we should say a proper formal welcome now that we've navigated the technology. I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Lucy Adams. I'm the CEO of Disruptive HR. And we're an organization that works with HR and business leaders to kind of help them do things differently. And of course, one of the biggest ways that HR is doing things differently is AI. And so, with me on this session today is Kristjan. I'm going to let you introduce yourself, Kristjan, but you are CEO of 50 Skills. So, just give us a brief explanation of your background and the role that you play.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lucian. Hi, everybody, and nice to see you all. Love to see the comments from on where you are all calling in from and your backgrounds. So my name is Kristjan. I've been working with startups for about 15 years. I joined a company that grew really fast. We raised a lot of money, and I was responsible for building all these HR processes. So for the last 8 years or so, I left that company, joined 50 Skills with a co-founding team to build a solution that's basically helping people to transform their HR processes, automate workflows, and add AI where it belongs. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper into what that means later on today as well.
So everybody is kindly putting in where they're dialing in from, and it's a great international audience. So from all over, obviously the UK, we've got the Netherlands, we've got Iceland. Do let us know as we go through where you're dialing in from and just say hi. But also that chat area is for you to put in any questions that you've got and to let us know whether you've got any observations or challenges. And Kristjan and I are going to do our very, very best to answer those questions as we go through. So really lovely to welcome you all here today. Kristjan, I think you're just going to kick off, aren't you? Oh, we've got someone from South Korea. Wow, fantastic. Welcome. You're going to kick off, aren't you, with just a bit of I suppose, an overview. The topic today is all about AI in HR and AI. And it's going to be looking at what's working, how can we get it going, where can it best be deployed, what are the benefits, what are the challenges. We've got a lot to cover in an hour. But I think you're just going to give us a bit of an overview of your thoughts. And as we said, I'm going to kind of chip in and interrupt as we go through.
Sounds perfect. And for the rest of you, please send everything in the comments. Send questions, send your thoughts, send whatever you're thinking about every slide. We're going to make this interactive and enjoyable for everybody. But I'm going to kick it off right now and just share my screen and go over basically what's been working for our customers, for other people in the industry, what's happening, and how can people actually get some value out of using AI. So I'm live with the slides right now, and I'm just going to walk through a couple of things on the Inside HR AI Playbook. So basically, I want to start this off with a quote that probably many of you have heard. Ginni Rometty, former CEO of IBM, said, "AI is not going to replace humans, but those who use AI will replace those who don't." And I fundamentally believe this to be true, and a good theme for the session that's ahead here. And I'm going to kick it off actually with a poll. So if you can see on the right side, there's a poll there, and it's going to have a question, which is just how often do you use AI at work? And we're going to kick it off here. You can see the live results right away. So you can see as people voting, are using it multiple times a day, daily, a few times per week, something like that. So you get a feel for the audience and what's going on. And we're going to make this interactive through the whole session. There's a number of these polls coming out. So please join us in just letting us know where you're at. And I love to see this in different sessions that I go to because I'm seeing more and more of people using it more often than multiple times a day rather than somebody who's never tried it or only a few times a month. And there was actually a recent survey by ChatGPT that came out earlier this week, both from them and Anthropic, which are the large companies with these model builders. And we're seeing the usage going up a lot, but how people are using it is still just, using it to prompt some really basic things, search online, and make some of the work they're doing a little bit easier. But I'm going to go a little bit over how you can actually empower that even more. But I like to see here that most people seem to be using it daily or multiple times a day, at least the ones that have been answering this so far. So let me get into the slides.
I'd love to kind of get people to talk about when they say they're using AI multiple times, is that for work-related tasks, or is it just that you're using it several times a day to do as I do, which is, work out my holiday plans and find out the best roasting times for particular meats and things like that, So it'd be great to see in the chat the kind of things you're using it for, work-related tasks. What are the kind of things you're using it for?
Absolutely. The kind of question that kind of comes up the most often. That would be awesome to see and for everyone to kind of collaborate on, seeing what people are using it and what they aren't. And if I go for like AI for HR and specifically, what does that mean? Like, we're going to talk about the benefits of using it. We're going to talk about all the services that are available out there. We're going to talk about some of the do's and don'ts for people in HR and how you can actually get started and what's a good practice in doing so. And there's a quote that I love to put out there as well. It's from a person I met with a couple of years in London. And when she was kind of hearing about, all the options that are out there, and she just basically said, I've kissed a lot of frogs that didn't turn into a prince. Will this be the same in terms of the services that are kind of being shown? So hope that you will kind of like what you see here today and decide on your next steps after it. But what are the benefits of using AI? So there's a ton of surveys about these whole things, like it can increase efficiency and productivity, all sorts of surveys indicating you can automate 60, 70% of things you do at work. There's enhanced decision-making. Leaders are saying that, they feel that when they're using ChatGPT and similar services, that it's basically giving them more actionable insights. So when they make a decision, they feel more comfortable with it. It can, improve cost savings. Companies like Microsoft, they reported that they saved over $500 million in cost savings. There's a lot of improved experience from employees, from customers, and others. One of the reasons it can solve things in real time instead of being turn-based. You don't have to wait for a human to answer. You can have a chat that does it immediately, or it can trigger workflows that do some interesting things. And it can really encourage innovation, because you can really use these tools to rethink how you want to do the processes and tasks that you have at work. And so here are some of the benefits. But at the same time, when these are the benefits, do more faster, smarter decisions, lower costs, those sorts of things, there's analysts putting out comments like these, hearing disturbing rumors that quick pilots of brand new and very immature technologies do not always produce immediate slam dunk successes. And there's a report by MIT that most of you have probably heard about that say that 95% of orgs are not getting returns on their AI investments. And the reason why that's happening is because they're not doing it right. And we're going to go a little bit over what is the right way of implementing AI in a workplace and actually getting that value that you can get. And the big solution here is actually what's called the AI Foundation, which is key to success. It's building the railroads to adapt and benefit from AI. And that foundation is basically twofolded. It's empowering your people to know how to use AI, what it is, making sure it has all the context to do things right, etc., giving them access to it. And the second is the foundation itself, the governance of AI tools that you have, the processes and the context that you give it. So what do I mean by that? So if we cover context window, now that matters a lot. So basically, when you see a window like this in ChatGPT or Claude or any of the tools that you're using, it's not just the prompt that you write, the text that you write that goes into it. There's way more context that can be added. And that context matters. That's stuff like the chat history. Like when you talk to the AI, the longer the conversation goes, the more it knows. The long memory. Does it know all the other conversations that you've had? Have you configured it in a way that it actually does that? And custom instructions. Have you given it certain instructions to say what it is, how it should work, how it should reply? That matters a lot. Second part, all the additional information that you're giving it. Are you giving it PDFs, spreadsheets, images? That's something that adds to the context. And then the part that probably matters the most, which are all the tools? Does it have access to the internet to search for things? Does it have APIs and integrations to other systems with all the information that could help make an answer better, and database information for what's important there? Now, all of this information, all of this goes into what's called the large language model, the AI, before it replies. And that's typically hosted in a data center in the US, in Europe, or other places in the world. It could even be hosted in your basement if you want to use open source tech. There's about 12,000 of these data centers worldwide. So when you're using an AI, you're putting all of this info in, goes to the data center, that you get your reply. That's how it works. And that context matters a lot. So let's take an example. You ask a question without context. You say something like, summarize my employee turnover. Now, it doesn't have your history. It doesn't know your prior conversations. It doesn't have any resources. You haven't given it any docs with your HR goals, and it doesn't have access to any tools. So the reply will be something like, I don't have details about your workforce turnover. Could you provide the data and context first? And you could, of course, do that. You could start to find it and give it in there, and you're not sure if it's the right data or not. And over time, you might come to the conclusion. But if you've set it up in the right way, you're able to have something that knows your old history. It has, previous chats that you've had where the goal came to show that it was to reduce maybe turnover by 5%. And then it has access to your HR database and benchmarking APIs. So it can actually give you a proper reply. Something like, the turnover was 14%. It's down from 17%. It shows you which teams turnover is highest in. It shows you compared to industry benchmark, if it's lower or higher. So in seconds, you can get the response you're looking for versus kind of going down that rabbit hole of, feeling the AI doesn't really work for me. And this is kind of critical because the access to tools is the big productivity hack, and making sure they work the right way. So if you ask, for example, your AI tool, like how many emails did I send this week? It can't tell you. But if you add your Gmail access or Outlook access, whatever that is, you can ask the same question and it can tell you how many emails you sent, or it can tell you what are the 5 most important emails that you received and which ones are kind of waiting for a response. It can tell you whatever you can think of, letting it know to ask, that now has the context of your email. And if you connect something like here, your calendar and email together, you can say something like, hey, before my meeting with Lucy today, summarize the latest email updates and, and all the previous notes. So you can, once you get acquainted with AI, once you've given your people access to it and learning how to use it, and you give it the right access to tools, you can start to do some pretty amazing things. But I want to look at a little bit of a bigger picture here. So, what's actually happening? Like if you look at marketing, for example, in the 60s or 70s, people in marketing, they used to, be all male, smoke cigars, and network with people. That was sort of the big skills to have. But then internet came along, mobile devices came along, and now every single product and service pretty much needs to be accessible there, available there. And they've become way more tech savvy, way more system oriented, those sorts of things. The exact same thing is happening to HR. It used to be administrative personnel work, but it's turning and shifting towards way more strategic, tech savvy, employee centric work. And the reason for that is because if you put up the right processes, the right systems, you have way less time spent on those administrative things. You can save up to 50% of your time, 80% of your time, whatever it is, depending on how much effort and tools and resources you put in. And that's not just for you. That's for all of the employees within your org, that you're properly equipped with the tools and resources that they need to succeed in their work. And we even try to, make a small chart here just showing like how can you actually look at this. And you have something like if you just do it manually, you just list up all the things you do at work. This is just an example. That will take you X amount of hours or minutes for each of these tasks. But if you have an AI helping you, either as a sidekick agent, you can save a lot of time on those tasks, even in some cases, fully automating them, changing the way you actually do the work. We even made this fun computer game in one of these vibe coding apps over the weekend. It kind of shows you that if modern HR manager competing with the dinosaur HR, if they use smart integrations and agents and stuff, how much faster they complete tasks. You can even play with this game later after the talk if you want to, with the links above. And so explaining this, like how is it actually being used? There are 3 ways that you can use AI. And the first one is what probably all of you are using based on that survey. You have access to something like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or Grok or the most common chat-based tools, or maybe even Copilot in your own work. And you go and you ask it questions. And most just ask it basic things, or even use it instead of maybe internet search. That's what 95% of queries today are being used for by 10% of the people on the planet. That's what people are asking. But what you can also do is you can use it as part of a workflow. So whenever something starts, let's say somebody fills out a form or somebody, asks for something in a chat-based window, that can basically say, okay, what type of query is this? And it can go, okay, because it's this type of query, we're going to then run this AI. And that AI tool will then have a defined task of what to do. For example, an employee request comes in, should it be approved or not? And the agent knows, the AI agent that's placed here, it just works a similar way as if you chat with AI. It will know all the information from the query, and it will know how to make a call and decision on it. You can then decide if you want to fully automate that, or if you want to maybe get the suggested response to you. You can approve if you agree or not. But if you always agree with what the AI does, you can fully start to automate these type of tasks. And I'll show you exactly how that works later. The third way is then what people talk about as agentic workflows. And it often starts the same way. Somebody asks a question in the task window, but it has access to something like 10 systems, 20 systems, whatever you can think of. And it will decide, just like a human would, which system to go to solve a task. So sometimes it might start with system number 1, and then 3, and then 10. It might ask Lucy if she's available for a meeting. It might then ask somebody else if they're available for a meeting, might then book a meeting for both of them, because it has access to all of those tools to actually do that. So here you'll have way more consistency because you've structured the way it happens, while here it kind of works like a human. They've gotten access to systems, but you kind of lose that control a little bit. So that's kind of the pros and cons of picking these 3 different ways. And I'm going to take some real examples of kind of more practical and just showing you numbers and letters here of what this actually means. But before I do that, I want to ask another poll here. Where is your HR org on the AI plus automation spectrum? And there's a couple of options you can go for there, but I'd love to see what people are putting in there as a response to just kind of give some feedback on before we kind of go into some of the options that we actually have. So where is your HR org on the AI automation? And the options is just like you haven't started on it. You're exploring some use cases. You might be using some AI point tools like chatbots and summaries. You have piloted automated workflows with maybe 1 or 2 processes live. Or final question here, like you're scaling it with a connected foundation and you're fully on there. And this is really interesting. A lot of people, this is actually surprising to me. I'd say more people here are piloting than what I'm used to seeing. Most people I meet, they haven't started or they're just exploring. But it seems here that we have a crowd with like almost 25% or more that have started actually putting something to use, which is really interesting. For those of you who have, please write in the comments like what you tried, what if it hasn't worked, if it hasn't worked, those sorts of things. I think people would love to see just thoughts and comments. And for those of you who haven't, like tell us why and if you're excited about it, those sorts of things. Like and this kind of community sharing, just all of us kind of spreading the our kind of knowledge on what we've tried and tested. That's hugely valuable for the crowd. So please put that out there.
I think this kind of corresponds really to when you look at the research around where is HR on AI and automation. I think Gartner did some research, suggested it was about 42% said that they're using AI for some administrative tasks, some policy development, some document generation. So actually, I think it's the fact that we're seeing the kind of the exploring, the piloting, and the scaling probably coming in at around 42%. I think that's great. I think it's suggestive that the audience we've got here are pretty much on the mark with where the rest of the HR profession is. I think you've highlighted, Kristjan, that this is a continuum from the kind of automation, the efficiency, through to I imagine you're going to go on to talk about now the kind of agentic phase, the actual creativity, and it'll be interesting to see what's feasible there, because certainly I'm aware of a lot of HR teams who are now have just kind of banked the efficiency piece and are now really moving into that next stage on the continuum. So I think it'd be really good to get your take on what's feasible, and then perhaps we can explore some of the great examples that we're seeing out there.
100%. So I'm going to kind of talk about that as well. Like what's feasible? Like what can you do? So like if you're wondering, like, okay, so what are people trying? What kind of services are available? And there are basically 4 ways, like, to embrace it. It doesn't matter what companies you're thinking about. There's 4 different ways. And the first is just chat. And like most people are there. 10% of humankind have access to ChatGPT alone, right? You go for a chat window, you ask it a question, you get a response. Great. And some of them are making it easy to add like your calendar and email and those sorts of things, and that's great.
There, Kristjan, and ask you a question that's come up, because I think it's a really critical one, and Sarah's asked, sort of made the comment that, you know, putting in sensitive or organizational information into ChatGPT or other platforms feels very high risk, and in some cases our organization is saying, no way, you know, we're not allowed to do that. And yet, from what you've been saying, it's having that context and that organizational specific information that's going to really drive value. So where do you stand on this, and where have you seen organizations net out around the kind of the ethics, the sensitivity, the risk aversion piece around data and sensitivity of that?
100%. I have a whole chapter on just on the do's and don'ts of what to put in and what not to. And I think I'm going to take it directly after this one. But in a nutshell, I mean, don't do anything that you feel is wrong or doesn't fit. Don't do anything that breaks the policies of your company or your, you know, the location you're in, country-wise, those sorts of things. But I'll go a little bit more in the specifics on like what's important to think about there. Is the data being used to train models? Is the data going outside of Europe if you're based in Europe? And other things that are really important when it comes to decisions for companies to do this, and if they trust that the system they're putting this into is trustworthy or not. But just bear in mind, every tool that you use, just to answer this question quickly, like every software that you use in your own work today, it's software with information that's hosted on a server somewhere, just like an AI is, right? And what's important is that that data is kept secure, that that data isn't used for something it shouldn't be used for, and that you make sure that there are rail guards in place that make sure that that doesn't happen. And that is the most important thing that is for anyone who's buying any vendor services to have in mind. And I'll show you some of the questions to ask as well. If we move a little bit forward with this, like you basically have this chat option, and when you buy this chat option, for example, it's typically hosted in the US. Now, there are some contracts and agreements you can make. You can buy more expensive subscriptions where it doesn't have training on the models and those sorts of things. And that's really important to have before you kind of introduce this to your employees and encourage them to put some sensitive data in there. But there are other ways to do it as well. You can buy, you know, pretty much any product out there, which is often called a software as a service product. We, for example, have used this product called Fathom. It's basically a meeting recorder. It joins the meeting like on Teams or Skype or whatever you're using. And when it joins the meeting, it records the audio. It takes that audio and turns it into text, and then it summarizes the meeting. Okay, most of you probably heard about that. But what's really interesting is that you can take 100 of those meetings that you've done. You can ask, how could we be more productive as an organization based on all the meeting transcripts that we have here? And it can give you some suggestions. You can then implement that, and 100 meetings later, you can check out the last 100 transcripts to see if you have actually improved. It's incredible what you can actually do with this, and it can be fully automated every single step of the way. Now, I highly recommend, of course, before you do go on a call with anyone with these AI note takers, to ask if it's okay to actually record the meeting. But if you do, and people are okay with it, they can also get the link and ask it questions and those sorts of things. So it's a huge value in there.
I'm also seeing diversity and inclusion teams and HR teams using that to assess whether there are certain voices that get drowned out or certain voices that get over promoted, particularly in kind of introvert, extrovert, gender splits. And they're using that to really think about how they can structure their meetings more effectively. So again, you've always got to weigh up this balance of sensitivity and making sure that people are comfortable with this data being fed in. You're usually asked to approve, aren't you?
With these 100%. And there are different tools. In this particular tool, for example, joins the meeting as like an attendee, so you always see it. Other tools are kind of behind on their computers and people don't know or see them, and that's really uncomfortable. So I think having a way of signaling, is this being recorded or not, are people okay with it or not, and having always have give people the option of opting out if they don't want to. The other thing to mention, like just automated workflows with any tool that you buy. Like you can have an email client for example, I use this email client Superhuman. If anyone sends an email that's related to a job that we're hiring for, it can just automatically detect that that's the email. It will forward it to the right person within the org, and like no time spent on that at all. It just happens fully automatically. So there are like ways that you can use simple functionality in a certain software that you buy that will really save you time. The third option is then just building from scratch. Like fastest growing company in the world today in software is a company called Lovable. You can literally just go in and write something like, build me an internal chatbot, have it answer questions about, leave policies, whatever. And it will build you a, prototype of something. It's not going to work perfectly, and you're going to have to spend some time in making it actually work. But this is the new type of competition that a lot of these products have. Instead of people buying some product, they can actually build it from scratch. And a lot of companies are choosing to do that for simple things they're trying to solve at work. And I was lucky enough to meet with Anton, who's the CEO of this company, 2 weeks ago in Copenhagen, and hearing some of the thoughts that he had on just like where this is going. And obviously the vision for him and the company that they have is that more and more people are now starting to be able to do things within maybe verticals within their org that they couldn't do before. So instead of talking to that marketing person about doing something, or salesperson or tech person, they expect you to be able to just put in a prompt and build it and solve it yourself. So everyone will need to get a little bit more technical in using these products. And then there's the fourth element, which are these workflow builders, which I'll primarily be spending more time on during this session, which is that when something happens, for example, somebody applies for a job in your ATS, it can automatically trigger an AI agent to rank the CV, the cover letter, give you certain ratings, those sorts of things. And if you want to use a workflow builder, what can it be used for? How do you use it? And why is it something of value? And there are a bunch of different solutions here for HR in chat, all sorts of products you can use there in the that you can buy access to, like your HR systems and payroll and ATSs. And they're all starting to basically add AI functionality within their own offering, making them better. But also, if you use workflow builders, you can often connect these together, empowering your ATS or your ERP or whatever it is that you use, making the functionality better from scratch. There's a ton of these built from scratch tools that I'll show you some demos from a little bit later on here today. And then you have different types of workflow builders. Now, our company, 50 Skills, we're specifically focusing on people processes. So for any type of process where a person goes through it, we have a UX and UI that really fits that, makes it easy for HR people to use and understand. But there's a ton of general workflow builders out there that sometimes can work well together. But if you're connecting two products together or making something really technical, then often it can be better to use some of those. So it's just some of the options that are out there for those of you who are wondering what type of product categories are there. And if I show you an example, like this is an app called Gamma. It's basically, it looks like a ChatGPT. You just put in your prompt like, hey, build me an employee handbook. And you can obviously give it way more context than just the size of your company. And it will start kind of looking like a ChatGPT by just doing the text and pages and stuff. But what comes next, and this is kind of interesting, because this app is designed to make you just like fully fledged designed assets. You can just pick what kind of themes do I want, what colors do I have. You can upload your own kind of themes, and it will build out the entire handbook for you in that look and feel, as long as you're happy with the text that came before it, which can also be built with AI. So it's quite incredible. If you're used to needing like a designer to help you with some HR stuff, like an employee handbook, you can make this reality in a very quick turnaround at a very low cost. Another thing is, like, we were playing with making videos, and these type of videos, like, we wanted to have, we've been playing with this, what we call dinosaur HR, kind of a theme that we use for marketing. So we put out a prompt, like, build me a video of an HR manager that looks like a dinosaur with employee request, and then kind of have the big 50 Skills logo in the end. And this is something that takes you seconds to do, which would have, needed to have an agency to help you out. And you can do the next scene after this one and the next one. So you're just seeing like a lot more people are getting the skills to kind of build these, generalistic use cases. But then I want to show you an actual HR use case. So I think like learning how to use a new product requires time, and your employees are busy with all these different types of products. So instead of letting them use new products, they're going to want to just talk to an AI. And so whenever your employees need something, they can just go into their AI and ask them whatever it is that they need. What are my health benefits and how do I access them? Or whatever question you would have in mind, Lucy. They put that in, and it immediately knows your employee, handbooks and policies, what's out there. It knows that if you actually want to use these benefits and get something reimbursed, because that's what the company offers, just put that into the AI. Put the receipt for your membership, the price for the membership, and it will actually automatically then kick off a workflow. So in this case, there's a predefined workflow, and Brahe here just filled it out. So he got added to the workflow. You can see because he put that into the AI, it automatically triggers this workflow here, checks if the receipt is okay or not. And if it is okay, it's going to send him an email seconds later confirming that this receipt has been approved. The gym membership that he just bought has been approved, and it's going to be reimbursed soon by the finance team. And you can even take this further and literally have it automatically reimburse him if the AI comes to the conclusion that it's okay. So this is an example.
With the HR director of Hilton Hotels, and they've implemented something very similar to this. And they were saying that, the volume of calls that the contact center had been getting initially just reduced by half and then went further. I think IBM, it's like 93% of their calls of any employee query are now answered by AI. And, I think there's always that worry, isn't there, is that, well, will it lack that personal touch? But actually, I think people, as long as the quality of response is good, it's quick, it's consistent, people actually, I think, are past the point where they kind of have an issue with that so much. Obviously, if it's more complex or it's really sensitive, they still need that option. But the amount of time that is saved, and also the kind of quality, consistency, the 24/7 nature of it, the ease with which people can get those responses is just really powerful.
Yeah, 100%. But I think like consistently over history, if you make a technology so good that the experience is far superior than to talk to someone and ask about it, you will use it. Like you don't, like the stuff you search for on Google, you don't want to call a person and ask the same question. It will take you way longer and be more expensive. So the same applies here. If anything you want as an employee, if it can actually work when you ask the AI, and it will work super quickly, it will always have the right response, it will trigger the right workflows when it should trigger workflows, that's going to create an incredible experience and add a lot of efficiency as well. And so if I go over like roughly what we do, like our product is basically a product where you can build any of these processes you want. You can create a process for applying for benefits or equipment requests or leave forms or whatever you want, right? And when you build that process, let's say you click onboarding, you basically add a person to that workflow. This is a workflow you've defined, something where you create an employee in your Bamboo, and then it creates a task in Bamboo. It can wait for a week before it kind of sends a reminder to the employee that they're about to start, those sorts of things. And you get a list of all the people who've been added to these workflows. So you see all the people, for example, who are being onboarded and where they are in their own onboarding journey. And with AI, you can basically trigger any of those workflows just like you would manually if you want to fill out a form, but you can also have the AI kind of trigger it. And so, how you actually get this right is actually doing it right is critical for the success itself. And so I want to walk through some of the do's and don'ts on that regard. And I think like if you're in HR, like you're responsible for a lot of things, right? You have to do onboarding. You have to do offboarding. You have employee management. You probably have an HR or ERP that's really hard to change. And even if you can change it into whatever you want to buy, it might only have, 5 or 6 functionalities to solve. But there are hundreds or more use cases you need to tackle and solve. And you're getting pressure of using AI and tech and trying to save time and those sorts of things. So how do you tackle it, right? How do you actually get value from this thing? And the reality is, like, you need to map up these processes. You need to figure out how to tackle each and every one and think about if I want to solve, how am I going to solve offboarding, and basically have that process mapped up in your org. Like our approach to solving that is basically making it easy for you to map up whatever that process is, make it decide how you want that to trigger for example, people fill out a form and then the process kicks off. It gives you that governance of seeing exactly how a process looks like. If there's an AI involved in a process, how those AI prompts look like. It gives you the option of seeing exactly all the people who've gone through a process, if an AI was used, what it was used for, what kind of summaries it came to. And you have all these, because the reality is like the way you do, for example, onboarding is different for pretty much every single company we've met. And so you want to have templates to easily get started, or AI to help you out to get started with building these, but then you can edit some of the steps to really adapt to whoever you are and make sure it integrates with all the tools you have. And I think the key here is making it simple enough so that anyone can use it. And this, for example, is one of our customers. This is Emmeline, and she's a hotel manager at a hotel called Islands Hotel, which have dozens of hotels all across Iceland, as an example. And she had this drawing. Like, this was the drawing she made to explain to us how she wanted to do onboarding in a different way than they were doing it before. And she was basically here earlier this year sharing how she built her own like first workflows, saving her hundreds of hours per year because she's automated various types of tasks that, it's really hard to find a system that kind of pins that specific problem down. And so I would actually love to hear, I'm pretty sure you'll have different opinions here, but I would love to hear if you have a specific process in mind, all of you, that you would really like to automate next. Like, what is your biggest pain problem at work? It could be a huge process that would create a lot of benefit for automating. But also, if it's just that small painful thing you do manually, like type it in there and let the rest of us see what it is that you're working on and what you'd really like to see automated. So
there's a good question that's come through, Kristjan. It'd be good to get your take on it. Jacqueline's saying that they onboard via an HRIS system. Does AI integrate with their HRIS?
Yeah, great question. Does HR integrate with your HRIS? It depends. So any product you want to integrate with your HR systems today, they typically do it through something called an MCP. I can show you in a second how that MCP looks like and how that works. And that's basically giving an AI the ability to talk to a system, get a response, and do something. And most of the modern tools are allowing that. If your HR system has the ability to allow that, or you can connect it to some workflow builder that will, you're able to kind of trigger something off and send it there. But it really comes down to looking at those systems and what they allow you for. So when you're looking at your processes and how you want them to work, one of the steps is, how does it talk to your existing systems, and what do they actually allow you to do?
So just a reminder to people, if you go down the right-hand side, you can see the poll that Kristjan's just put up there. And these are obviously asking, this is asking a question about automation rather than the kind of bigger creativity piece. But what's coming through is that CV screening, so again, the efficiency drive there, and the HR help desk is definitely kind of where people are at. Onboarding to a slightly lesser extent. But the votes are kind of coming through a bit more now. So CV screening, a bit on training, help desk, and onboarding.
And I'm gonna actually walk you through what our customers have been using the most, so you can see what are those use cases and what have they been using it for. And so if I kind of just show you some of those examples, what our data is telling us, our most common use case is onboarding. It saved our clients the most in terms of actions that have been automated there. But they've also used it for stock option, like automation and offboarding and notifying employees for various things that are coming up. And if I look at like this chart, what's really the most interesting part to us is the other part here in the bottom, because there are so many things that just don't make it here that are unique to each HR person, that they have now gotten a tool in their hands that they can actually automate things for that none of the other things they had before could work for. But let's take a look at each one of these and how AI can be used. So onboarding, you have new hires, seasonal hires, contractors, temp, and you can use AI as part of that step in something like buddy allocation or photo ID validation. You have stock option agreements where you can basically validate the input that people are putting in. At some step, a user is asked to provide certain types of information, and the AI can check if everything's been filled out correctly. Same with offboarding, like there's exit reports that you can summarize. With notifications, like all sorts of reminders. There are customers using this to automate birthday messages and reminders and fun activities at work, randomizing which employees should have a special occasion for the entire company this month, fully randomized with AI. and it can personalize message drafting. There's a lot of people using it for all sorts of event registrations, like internal and external events, and summarizing a lot of things coming from the attendees. Requests is huge, like having a portal and just really mapping up all the things your employees ask you for, whether that's benefits, incidents, queries, and really like document like what is the inputs that you need for this process. Like if you would do this process manually, like what would people need to let you have in your hands so that you could actually finish this process? Like automating that as much as you can, and getting the AI to work in that regard. And then you have things like, there was a popular vote here on the CV screening, so we definitely have some TI people with us here today. And that's also like somebody applied for a job. How can you have an AI actually, review the CV, review the cover letter, review the, all the extra additional information that's there, and automatically coming up with some sort of a ranking of the candidates that are there, generating everything from suggested interview questions and other things. And these can all be done here. But I think what's interesting is like how specifically can it be done? And just kind of showing you some of those core examples and visualizations of it. And just before I go into it, like I also think that just in general, like use cases is one thing, but like productivity is the big thing. That's the most commonly reported benefit from what people get out of this. Your team gets more productive. There's reduction in admin. People are happier, more satisfied. You have something like reduced time to hire, but also employees are satisfied. And this is just growing month on month, the more that people use this. And I think like what's most important is like how actually much time have you shaved off? And the more people use the system, the higher this number goes. And we're seeing about a third of all of our customers who are shaving off about 25% to 50% or more of all the admin time that they're using after having used the system. And this is just like raw data from surveys that we've gotten from some of our customers. And so like, how do you actually like get this path going? Like, I think, the big thing is not to start with something too big. Like just take one HR process and automate it. And I would start with something super simple, just one use case where you're, doing the process the same way as before, but you're just using it to draft the message or something like that. Second part is, experiment with more advanced AI agents, like really get them to do CV screening or automate these employee requests, really, the painful processes that maximize this productivity, but don't do it until you've kind of seen at least one or two processes really work with this AI thing. And then the third one, that's really when you kind of put the AI to use in terms of, okay, whenever someone asks for something, what process should it trigger? How does that work? How do I define if it should trigger this process or the next? And I think that's the part that a lot of people often don't realize. They watch a fancy demo, but like, how can you make sure that the AI knows what to do? So in this video, for example, you have somebody who's going on parental leave, right? So they're wondering what to do. They ask the AI, and it knows the entire parental leave policies because it's been written down. Now, it can tell them, hey, you can talk with a supervisor and let them know the news. So just like you were mentioning, Lucy, like you can, of course, just reach out and talk to them and explain the situation, or you can just fill out this form, and that's actually, counts as an official notice that you're expecting a child here in March. And when you do that, you can decide if it needs to like kind of prompt you. So you need to like always approve whenever this kind of goes officially through or not. But it will automatically create a user. And what you can count on when that happens is that you have a process that doesn't happen often in people's lives. But when they do happen, you know that you have a process going to trigger 6 months into the future, making sure that people get notified, when the baby arrives, when the person is coming back to work, with all the reminders months ahead of time. But the real question is like, okay, this is great in this demo, but how does the AI actually know if this is a parental leave request or an employer request? Which process should it start? And the only way you can, make sure that works is you have a governance tool to define it. So for example, for every workflow, you should be able to configure, hey, when should this workflow start? And you can give it instructions, like this is the instructions for the parental leave one. And these are all the fields that people need to fill out. You need to put that text in, and you need to put in the work to explain when it should trigger this workflow, when it should trigger the next. But after you've done it, you can make sure that whatever it is that you have on your employee portal or manager portal, it's going to actually work. And this governance part is really overlooked because like if you give people access just to chat-based AI, you have no idea what they're using it for. You have no idea what information is going in there, and you have no idea what the AI is actually doing whenever something gets triggered. But in a tool like this, you can have a folder for various types of HR processes, marketing processes, whatever you want. And with each folder, you'll see the actual workflow. You'll see exactly how it looks like when someone fills out this form, for example, here for an employee hardship grant application. Somebody fills it out. This is the AI agent. This is the prompt that it's going to shoot out, just like if you would use it in ChatGPT. And it's going to enrich the prompt with all the things that they filled out in the form, making sure that the prompt is different for every person. And so you can actually see what was used and all the people that went through it. And that governance part, being able to say, look, this prompt, we've run this 1,000 times. We've done audits on it. We've checked if it's biased or not. It's working. We feel comfortable with now having this fully automated and checking in every month or so rather than always having a human in the loop. And you can only do that if you have that type of governance structure and kind of thinking process on how it's being used. And it can be used for requests and approvals from employees, asking for anything you can think of. But don't disregard like those simple use cases. Like here, for example, you have an individual who is applying for a visa, passport to work in your country. Now they submit a photo, and you're wondering like, would the AI approve this photo? Now you could of course manually take the photo and copy paste it into your chat-based AI and ask it a thoughtful question. But you can also have it part of an automated process. So whenever you're onboarding these people, you have the information getting uploaded, one of those information snippets being their photo. And it's going to basically let you know if it's approved or not, the photo, to move forward. In this case, it's not. It's not plain light color. The head is turned, and the person seems to be smiling. So the AI can detect this, and it's very accurate. And a lot of our customers, for example, they're they have maybe a background check where something needs to go to a police officer before they get the approval to work in a regulated area. And because it's all it's like one step of a larger process, but just because you automate that part, you can save, weeks in having that employee up and running and working instead of, getting a rejection weeks later. So there's a ton of these examples where it can actually work, but people got to figure out what is it that works best for them. Is it the CV screening, getting reports like these that are on par with what humans give people when they screen a candidate? Because you can build those automations already today with these workflow builders. And there's just super simple examples. And we can share these slides later on with links because there's a lot of content to cover. But that's super simple, use cases ranging from, pre-checks with applications before it sends to a third party, all sorts of error detections, policy compliance, and more. And I think for us, I think the big difference between our customers is that, yesterday they were able to automate their processes and have this AI handle the admin. And it's great that it connects with all your systems and, forms can trigger these workflows and there's a portal for everything. But I think the part that's really valuable today is just that now that everyone has learned how to use AI, I mean, most of you are using it multiple times a day. Now that everyone's learned it, it's so good to offer this natural language for everything related to HR in one place. So there's no need to scan the portals or fill out these forms. It's really you just go to that chat-based interface, you put it in there, and you get the response that you want. And the reality is your employees, this is what they will be using as a sidekick moving forward, right? If they're in sales, they're going to ask about their sales numbers in this kind of tool, and they will get a response. If they want to ask about their HR related activities, they will expect a response as well. And you want to have tools that can basically integrate with that and offer that to make the experience better. Now, a little bit on the do's and don'ts, what can you actually use it for? And this was a good question in the beginning. I think you can never automate your own responsibility. You're hired to be responsible for certain things. You can't automate that. So use your own judgment in what's, okay to put into the AI or not, and make, that available for your employees as well. But there are also guidelines from your employer. And there's all sorts of ethics and internal guidelines on what they prefer and prefer not to use. The products themselves, like ChatGPT, has their own product policies. And then there are laws, like more stricter laws in Europe than in the US and other places. And literally, like the usage policy for OpenAI is that you can't make automated decisions that has a huge impact on individuals' rights or well-being. And so even if, I mean, the technology already allows you to hire people in real time, put up a job poster, scan it, apply, and you're hired. But you can't do it because the policies and the laws don't allow you to. You have to make sure that it's a high stakes decision, that there's a human there in the loop that basically reviews it and makes the final call. I also think like the hosting, like there is a risk pyramid here. Like ideally you want to host everything in your basement or in your own company and nobody can have access to it, not even online, just you. But like the reality is most have it in a data center in your own country or in your own continent. You can also host it in the US. If you're not from the US, you know, I'd not recommend it, but it's something that some people still do. Or you can host it in other countries, some riskier perhaps than others. But there are some good rules of thumbs because I think most of the people here are from Europe. Like to request these two things, like is it EU data residency enabled, making sure that all of the customer data is processed within EU borders. So it goes into a data center in your continent, being Europe, and making sure that's processed there. And the second question, and I would ask every single vendor you talk with about these two things, do they have a zero data retention policy, which basically means there's no storage or training on any of the customer data? And get this validated and confirmed before you use it into any type of sensitive data that you have access to. And that's sort of the final poll that I wanted to have. Like the biggest blocker for you to scaling AI in HR, to shoot that question out there. I'd love to hear your responses on what the biggest blocker is before going into just the practicality, what to do next if you want to get started with something like this. So I'd love to see some of the responses there from the crowd on the right. Biggest blocker in scaling AI in HR for your team.
So just a reminder, open up the poll on the right-hand side. You can see it there. And you've got options around the systems and integration being siloed, data quality and access, team skills, company policy restrictions, budget and competing priorities, dependence on IT or other. So do put that in. Interestingly, the team skills piece is coming through as being a blocker, as well as competing priorities and budget. But the team skills seems to be up there. Oh no, budget is just taken over.
Yeah. But I would on the budget. It's also like I think and these are the two most common ones that we are seeing as well. Team skills. It's definitely the same choices that we're seeing. I think the skills part is also just because these products are complex. A lot of these products are way more complex than people think. People know how to use the chat-based AI for simple things that they're doing at work, but like to actually get the value from it, it often requires people to go a little bit out of the comfort zone and building stuff without IT, or it's hard to get their attention on it. And that's a common one. But what I would suggest,
if I can just come in there, Kristjan.
Yep.
I think on the team skills piece, what we're seeing is some, just create a bit of kind of curiosity, allow people to play, allow people to experiment. I think it was Novartis. They had they called it an AI playground day. And this was just where HR teams could test out different tools. They got a bit of training, but there was no pressure. It was just kind of enabling people to have a bit of fun with it. Because I think there is, if you're not comfortable with it, if you've not used it before, the opportunity to have a play, ask questions, and see what's feasible can be a great way of just beginning to get people engaged. And also focus on something where there's a real pain point. So there's a real drive and a need to want to learn and get better because it's a real life pain for them at the moment. So I think those are the things that we're seeing HR teams doing.
I 100% agree. Playing with it is like the most practical thing to get started. And that's really like the step number one. Just start using chat-based AI. Give people access to Claude or ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini or Grok or whatever tool it is that you feel is the right one for you, until it becomes a norm for you and your people as well. And like most people, like I would say, are using it 95% of the time for the same stuff. I would say try to change those percentages. So you use it maybe 50% for repetition, 25% make the stuff you're always using it for a little bit better, and then start to experiment with the other 25%. Like really try and not just use it the same way, but like really split it into 50-50 iteration and experimentation, and just the stuff it already works for, whether that's translations or searching for stuff online, whatever it is, but making it a norm for you. And instead of solving just the next task you have, like ask the AI, like, hey, this is something I'm thinking about solving. Do you have a better idea of solving it? Ask me the questions you have, and all the context required to help. Ask it these types of questions. Ask it stuff like, prompts that you're used to using or want to use. Instead of just putting it in, say, hey, can you make this prompt a little bit better? And put it in there. And ask it, ask the AI to ask you whatever questions that it needs to ask you to actually be able to make it better. So it has the context. And then try the context stuff. Like really, like if you have an employee survey, ask it about the themes in the survey. You can remove a column with people's names if you don't want to put any PII data in there. Completely understood. But like take that all away and put it in there and see what the AI can actually do when it comes to analyzing things, and get those fundamentals right in just using chat-based AI, and then integrate it with other tools. It has this fancy name, MCP. Sounds way more complex than it is. Like build some sort of a context document, like a document that explains who you are, what you're trying to do, how processes you work, and ask them like, once you've connected these, like, hey, you just had a meeting with your management team. You decided that you're going to hire someone. The meeting was recorded in a tool you used, and you already have access to workflow. So you can actually say something like, can you just review the team meeting transcript and file a hiring request? And it's going to ask you all the questions for a hiring request, like what type of, it has everything from the meeting transcript. It will ask you whatever it's missing, and it will automatically trigger that workflow off. Like you'll be able to do these things, but it's like a step by step. You need to know the basics before you do something more advanced than this. And really the tips to get started here, like start with the chat-based AI. Once you've gotten, there, like actually it looked like most of you, or majority of you had, are using it multiple times a day. Like then you go and map up your workflows. And you can do that on a whiteboard. You can do it in a Google Doc document. Like what are the tasks that you need to do at work? What are those workflows? The ones that are like urgent, important, would make a big impact for you. Then once you map them up, however you do it, like try and figure out what are the tools that could help you do this. Like for these important urgent tasks, is it your existing systems? Do you need to buy something new? Can you use chat-based AI for it? What's out there, and just solve one thing at a time. Pick one of these workflows, one of these tasks, and solve it all the way through, and try and get the results from that. And if you can't do that, pick another one. Like you have to solve one thing and make sure it brings you value. That's why we always suggest start with something small, something basic that can provide you that value part. And once you get there, and once you see it happening, you just repeat this process. And that's how you actually get to that place of getting value from the AI, because most people just fail at these steps. They start to do way too many things at the same time. So my advice is just like Lucy, you said, like give your employees access to these tools. Like let them buy it, let them try it, let them learn and fail, let them do experiments, have a fun AI day, like really push with management and getting those things done. And then you map up your processes. You try and make the same processes a little bit better with AI. And then you can go for step number 3, that just really rethink the way these processes could be redefined now that you have it. So it's really like just these 4 steps that I like to put out there. Like the success is really just start with a thesis. What do you want it to achieve? Define the metrics, how you're going to build success for it. Execute, put it into action, and then review and iterate. Like the reality is 95% of people that fail on this, they skip step number 1. They don't define a thesis. They never do the metrics on it. And they just try these endless things without knowing if it's working. And consistently, following these steps is what's giving people the ROI that they want. And just final words, because we only have a minute left for those of you who need to leave at 1 before we do a Q&A. We have an event in London on September 30th. If you want to meet in person and sign up for that, we have some amazing people joining us there. So I highly encourage you to come and meet us in person there if you're there on the 30th. And then if you want to follow us to learn more, I'm always posting some new findings on LinkedIn. So you have my contact details there, email and LinkedIn. And if there's any follow-ups you want to do with us here at the 50 Skills team, you can follow us on LinkedIn. You can try the product actually for free. You can just go online and see for yourself. or meet with some of the experts on the team. And we'll share a link to all of these slides later on after the meeting. But yeah, thank you so much. And I'd love to take some questions.
We're actually at 2 o'clock, Kristjan. So I'm not sure whether we've got time to answer questions. I think we were scheduled for an hour, weren't we?
Yeah, it just finished. Yeah, exactly. So, well, all the questions that you put in there, I'll make sure to actually personally follow up with you and send you a response on those. But thank you just so much for all of you who were able to stay with us the entire time. Thank you so much, Lucy. And yeah, looking forward to hearing the feedback on the talk and what you liked and what could have been done better. Thank you so much.